I'm just really excited about this podcast episode, and would yeah, I'd love to just hear your story, how you got into this sort of work of facilitating uh psychedelic healing sessions. I don't want to put words to what you guys do, so it would be best if you guys just describe that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's say.
Okay, so I guess the long story is when I was younger, I was called to participate in psychedelic journeys. At the time, I would have said that it was for curiosity or for fun. Looking back, I think my soul, my spirit knew that this was a connection and a tool that I can use in life to help me expand my mind, expand my heart, to keep me in alignment and integrity with who I am and who I want to be. And so that path of curiosity and for fun lasted into my adulthood.
Mm,
And about 8 years ago, I moved to Costa Rica and realized the importance and the beauty that these plant medicines can have for healing and expansion. And so then I shifted to also wanting to offer the space and a safe space and a deep space at which I can bring other people into these
mm,
experiences. That's also the same time that I met Danny.
mm,
So both found the path separately for ourselves and then came together and built the spaces to bring others.
mm. So how did that idea of like doing this? It sounded like you were both kind of on a similar journey, and then it connected with one another. How did like what was that next step of being involved with the plant medicines, and then taking that step of, hey, let's do this together with 4 other people? How did that come into fruition?
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think for me, I've been on this path for about 16 years now, and I had taken a 1 year sabbatical that turned into 10 years of just dedicating myself to learning and researching and understanding everything there is to know, or as much as you can, around entheogenic plant medicines. So that really became a big starter. But there was a point where I could no longer just be a bystander and
Mhm.
just a witness to everything. And really, I felt the need and desire to really
Mm,
step up and give back somehow from everything that I've learned and understood, especially because in the walk of getting to know all the different modalities that are out there, I was also witnessing some things that were just very negligent, and things
mm,
that I would say, this is doesn't feel right, that this
yeah.
should be done this way. So I felt that there was a need for doing things differently and better.
Hmm.
And of course, Sarah comes into my life, and I think that was the yin and the yang that was needed to
Oh,
come together to make perfection. And
wow.
that crossing together and converging together and doing the passion that we both have for this
Mm,
level and commitment to be of service to others, number one,
yeah.
but primarily to create the environment, the space that could be conducive for people in of all sorts of walks of life can step into that. So
Yeah.
it created that environment, and here we are.
Wow. So like what walk me through like what is that environment that you guys envisioned that was going to be different in, when you first started doing this together?
Yeah, my first experience with ayahuasca was in Peru. It was what felt like in the middle of nowhere in the jungle. I had no English instructions. There wasn't anyone there that spoke English fluently. And not that it was not a safe space, but there's levels to safety. There's, are you safe and do you feel safe? And
Mm,
I knew that if I wanted to leave, I wouldn't know what direction to go. And so I didn't dive deep that night because of the way the setting,
mm,
talk about set and setting, the
yeah.
setting was didn't have the layers in which I could go in and dive in deep. And so
Mm,
I experientially know for myself, and then now through hundreds of people, that the safer we are and the safer we feel, the deeper we can go. And so it was important to me to create a space for people to come and feel safe.
mm,
And the experiences in the jungle are important and vital, and it's not always the best experience for someone's first time or second or third or fourth or fifth.
yeah.
People would like to have preparation People would like to have somebody there to help them process. People
Mhm.
would like to have someone there to help them integrate. And so those are the things that we find valuable to our core, in addition to, of course, the foundation of the ceremony itself. We can
Mm.
have strong, powerful, traditional ceremonies. And then outside of that space, we work with people to make sure that their nervous system is back reset, that after ceremony, they can go into a space where they could turn on their AC, they could take a warm shower, they
Mm.
can do what they need to feel comfortable and safe
Yeah.
and continue on the journey.
Mm.
Yeah. I know that this is the work we do is ancient work. There's nothing new to what we're doing. This is something that has been practiced for thousands of years, and of course, it's coming deep from the Amazon jungle, and it's ultimately opening up to a more broader demographic, and in the
Mm.
Western world is tapping into it. So I
Mm.
realized that there was some need to just adapt it in a way that
Yeah.
is conducive to creating that right environment.
Mm.
So for us, also, just the lifestyle of the indigenous communities is not the same as the lifestyle as the Western community. So making sure that everyone was safe and that the proper screening was being put together in place and that there was proper integration
Mhm.
that took place. So all of these factors made it for us to realize the importance of putting a what we call a container
Mhm.
together, and it's a very well curated container that has a lot of thoughtful intention behind it,
Mm.
and to create the environment where people, like Sarah says, can find that level of trust, and that will
Mhm.
ultimately end up in being in a surrendered state, which would
Mm.
allow you to do deep inner work within the medicine.
Yeah. So do you find that the people who come out of it, most fulfilled or with the most clarity are the people that have those kind of deeper levels of surrender in their experience?
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is actually the key marker around the work in antigenic plant medicines is how much that central nervous system is ready for receipt.
Mm.
That's the
Wow.
key marker on this and that's ultimately we work very hard at achieving that for the guest, allowing their
Mhm.
central nervous system to really be at ease and relax. Because the more it is,
Mhm.
then of course, the easier the medicine will work and will allow to have that symbiosis between the
Mm.
medicine and the individual. So
Yeah.
there is a clear aspect of the difference between one and the other.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I was going to add that that doesn't mean that we have to be in a perfect mindset. So we can talk about set and setting mindset. So people can come in with things that they're working on, whether that's living in fear or having anxiety or depression. It's feeling safe. And so
Mm.
feeling safe to work on these things. And so
Yeah.
that's a lot of the work that
Mm.
we.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm curious too, is there like would you say there's a specific theme that people show up with, that you can, as practitioners who have done this for, I don't know, how many people have you guys done this for? Hundreds, thousands,
Thousands. Yeah.
Yeah.
thousand? Yeah. Would you say there's like kind of a common thread between those people that you find yourself coming into to your retreats?
I do find that as people get to know each other, they realize they have a lot more in common than they think they do. A lot of people think they're alone with some of their
Mm.
their challenges and their beauties. And so that is common, that we have a lot to talk about, a lot in this interesting
Yeah.
web that we weave. However, there are, I would say, two separate areas in which people come for. And so some
Mm.
people are on the healing side, and then some people are on the expansion side. Now,
Mm.
some people that come in for healing, they receive expansion as well.
Mm.
And some people that come
Huh.
in for expansion, they also see areas in their life that could become stronger and more foundational.
Hmm.
Some of the Now, to say something in common, it some people are, for example, they are shifting in their identity. So that could look like a retirement. That could look like a woman coming to an age at which her roles that she has played and the masks that she has worn are so uncomfortable that she
Mm.
cannot stand it. And so, how do we shift through re-identity? We
Yeah.
have worked with athletes mid-career, and we have worked with athletes retiring and moving through that process. And so that also is equal to people in high performance jobs where they
Mhm.
feel like they're on the edge of something and they would like to elevate. That
Yeah.
can also come from people that feel like they're blocked, but they don't even know what that means. And how do we
Mm.
unblock so that we can be the highest version of ourselves, the most vibrant version of ourselves?
Yeah, but in
Mm,
general, it's people from all sorts of walks of life because there's healing and expansion need on both sides. The reality is that the mental health crisis is so huge out there that it's ultimately bringing a lot of people in that regards. But the people on the expansive side is really where it's interesting. We have a lot of people that have kind of climbed that corporate ladder all the way to the top, and they're like,
yeah,
in this realization that I said, okay, I've got to the top. Now what? And then there's those, many of those, I think one common thread of many people in seek of, ironically, as their podcast, purpose, right?
yeah,
They are on that path of seeking what is
yeah,
my purpose. And if there's one thing these entheogenic plant teachers can provide is certainly a glimpse of what that purpose could look like.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, I've done mushrooms a couple of times, and I've definitely experienced that. I would say that expansion. My setting of doing it does was nowhere near as, what it sounds like, this safe environment that you're providing people. It was like I was gonna go to a Chili Peppers concert, and I just took like 3 grams, and I was like, oh, we'll just figure it out, and we'll go. And it was honestly one of the scariest experiences of my life. We ended up not even going to the concert. Um, but but yeah, I think it definitely has that capability, of, especially if you go in, I've gone in other times where I have that intention of wanting to understand, myself better, or yeah, my purpose. And I have experienced that it has provided, it has helped me to gain clarity around that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious too, because it seems like, this is a beautiful place, and, it costs money for people to get on a plane and go somewhere and to take time away from work. But like, I guess, like, how, from your perspective, what is that? How does, how would you make this more accessible to other people who are searching for, purpose, clarity, healing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Me or you? Go
Yeah.
for it.
So I would say, it's really important. We live in such a hectic, fast-paced life that we rarely find the time to slow down and take a pause. If
Yeah.
we are really seeking purpose, we're not going to find it in the exterior. We're not going to find it in the distractions that the world provides. It really is taking a moment to retreat
Hmm.
from society, retreat from everything that's surrounding, finding yourself in a new environment where then you can find all the right elements and ingredients for the things that have any really true meaning and value in your life to
Hmm.
really surface. So I think for us, we understand how important it is for people to break time away, and that's probably one of the biggest commodity nowadays is time, and
Yeah.
we value that significantly. So we take a lot of personal care and making sure that the people that are coming in and dedicating their time to us for this and to themselves really provides as much as they can get from this,
Hmm.
right? Of course, we offer a 7-week program that allows people to come in 3 weeks, or not come in, but really begin on a 3-week program prior for preparation purposes, 1 week boots on the ground retreat kind of
Hmm.
thing. And then, of course, 3 weeks of post integration work. So, accessibility can be found in many ways. We have communities that we've put together. We do monthly talks and aspects that we can start bringing people in the
Hmm.
conversation, which is a step one for most people, is really just
Hmm.
beginning with the conversation.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we find what is the right element for you? What's the right plant medicine for you? Not just a free for all on how it is, but where are you in life? We take
Hmm.
the time and care to look for the level of readiness that the individual may be. So we know that we can time the right individual for the right group.
Yeah.
We work with small, intimate groups. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of intention and care that goes behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just add there. I love the question on accessibility because that's near and dear to our heart. When we started almost 9 years ago,
Mm,
it is a part of the work that we do that anyone who is called to the medicine should have access to it. And
mhm,
at the time, I was thinking of people that cannot afford it. And so we have community ceremonies in which we have funds for people to come
mm,
for free.
mm.
Now, when I say free, we do want commitment. And so that's still very
Yeah.
important to us that there is an investment, whether that's time. And as we grew in this, I also realized everyone who is called to the medicine should have access to it. And so
Mm,
that is all economic statuses. And that is the people that will not be able to dive deep in the jungle. They want to have a small group. They want to have personal care. And so we're so proud and honored to offer
Yeah.
both sides of this. The Behold Retreats, where is the small retreat group and very comfortable, cozy bungalows and
Yeah.
environments at which you have that privacy when you want it, and then you have a team when you want to have conversations and go into
Yeah.
the ceremony. I would encourage anybody on this path, wherever they are, just to make sure that as they're connecting with different organizations, and we of course hope that you connect with us, but whether you come into ceremony with us or others, when you start those conversations, if the spirit is come on down and see what happens versus let's do this like an interview. You're
Mhm.
interviewing us and we are interviewing you. It's important to us that you personally are called to the medicine and that
Yeah.
you're committed to a life change.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
we want to make a beautiful difference in this world, and that comes from people not looking to just come and have their mind blown, but
Yeah.
come a very profound experience and then make directive and decisions in their life to make it better.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it's really beautiful your guys' heart behind this, and making it, wanting to serve people, but also understanding that like not everybody can just, take whatever 2 weeks away from work and go down to a nice place and do this. It's like, yeah, that's great to be able to do it in that sort of place, but also I think your guys' willingness to make that accessible for people who also feel called. I think that that's really admirable. And also too, the other thing that I was thinking about while you're saying that is it sounds like almost like a heart posture thing that people have of like feeling like this is what I need, and almost like a humility of acknowledging, hey, like I need help from somebody else or from these plant medicines to, to get to where I'm going. And you see that, is that something that you would say you look for in every person before you admit them onto your retreats?
Yes and no. The yes is the part of everything that you just said. And sometimes our ego doesn't allow us to acknowledge that within ourselves. So,
Yeah.
for example, 9 years ago, I didn't really like the word plant medicine because to me, medicine is if you're sick and I'm not sick. And so there are
Yeah.
people that come for that expansion and they realize there actually are some underlying things. And so
Mm,
even if we recognize that in a call, we wouldn't need somebody to face that right away.
yeah.
That can unfold for them as they're here, as they're working through the
Mhm.
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to mention something going back around the accessibility aspect.
Mm.
There's many organizations or groups out there working with this uh, type of entheogenic plant medicines. And I know for us, accessibility comes in many ways of looking at it. And we've decided to create an environment it's the accessibility that we're creating is accessibility to those that wouldn't otherwise go into the jungle and go
Mhm.
raw into somewhere where they're just like, in the middle of the boonies, and this just
Mhm.
they wouldn't be feel comfortable or safe in that
Yeah.
environment. So for us, it's how can we create an environment that is
Mhm.
conducive for those that otherwise would not entertain this. And it's really been a key model for us in our case to create the right, safe, cared
Mhm.
for environment that
Yeah.
people then would say, okay, I am going to do this. And it's allowed for people from all walks of life to step into this, from top
Mhm.
athletes to CEOs to
To
uh,
politicians.
politicians to surgeons and doctors. I mean, across the board, we've had enormous amount of people that otherwise you would not see them in the Amazon
Mhm.
jungle.
Mm. Yeah, and, you also mentioned there were priests you mentioned on our prior call that would come, right? I'm very curious, like, what is that like when, or, like, what if some of the things that you've seen of these people who come in with a certain belief system, and then they have this encounter with, um, uh sorry, you said what's the term you guys use?
Entheogenic.
Ethnio Sorry, could you say it one more time?
Entheogenic. Entheogenic.
Entheogenic.
Right.
Okay, entheogenic, substances? Is that what you
Mhm.
said? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, what have those outcomes looked like in regards to their belief systems?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think first is a even deeper connection to the spiritual side of whatever
Mhm.
their religion is. I feel like they not feel like I have experienced and witnessed their heart grow even bigger in
Mm.
non-judgment and non-judgment
Yeah.
for others, even people that they don't agree with. And
Mm.
it can really also solidify their connection with their faith.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
the transformations we've witnessed is quite vast and vary from people, but their ability to reconnect with themselves is a big one. And
Mm.
regardless of their belief system or religion, everything, all that is just simply wiped off for one
Yeah.
second. Slate is cleared out, and now they have just a clear reconnection with them first,
Yeah.
and then of course they reconnect with the nature, with their relatives, where everything that has any real meaning and purpose starts to take place. So it's
Mhm.
beautiful to see at all the different walks of life what that means to them and how we
Mm.
witness their transformation along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to add that we've had a lot of people also come in that perhaps had a childhood with a religious connection given to them with their parents, and say something has happened where they have a disconnect from that.
Mhm.
They threw everything out the window,
Mm.
as opposed to saying, this landed, this resonated with me, and this did not, and taking what
Mm.
was healthy and beneficial and loving and connection and
Yeah.
the path of the golden rule for
Mhm.
ourselves and for others. Everything was thrown out the window. And so it is also beautiful to see people reconnect,
Mm.
Mm.
reconnect in a way in which they have more perspective of the spirit of spirituality. What was the
Mhm.
purpose and the truth, not maybe what had happened from humans within their
Yeah.
religious course.
Mm.
Wow, that's really interesting, and to be able to have, that expanded, awareness of looking at, like, this was to be able to critically look at, like, this is what was true, this is what was not true, not, like, clumping them together. Like, yeah, that is yeah, I'm really curious, like, how do you facilitate that, yeah, self-reflection?
So I'm so happy to say that we don't necessarily have to facilitate that. It is the work with the human and the plants.
Mm,
And our work is, say, the next day there is some processing, we can guide in that processing. The work
mhm,
is really with them and the plants.
Yeah. If
mm,
anything, all we're doing is creating this supportive, loving environment for people to really connect with their higher self,
Yeah.
and the ability to, through the aspects of these entheogenic plant medicines and their
mm,
ability to tap into an altered state of consciousness,
Mm.
which
mhm,
isn't something easily done in the world out there. It takes a Buddhist monk takes years for them to find themselves in that space. And to give you an idea, but in a one night ceremony that you're able to just activate an area of the brain, for instance, that has been dormant or stagnant,
mm,
atrophied for the majority of your life, and all of a sudden it becomes hyperactive, and you have
mhm,
now an ability to have a wide perception in life.
mm,
And starts with a level of introspection, right? Starting witnessing who you are and self actualizing and realizing
mm.
who you are. And from there comes the real beautiful changes and transformation.
Wow. How have you guys developed as people through this process of leading people through these experiences?
Mm.
So, what do you always say are three things that happen?
So, three things that I would say that ayahuasca, for instance, provides is awareness, awareness, awareness. And from there, we get to realize what are the changes we need to make in our lives.
Mhm,
What are those things that we need to tweak in our lives to really be the highest version of ourselves in any way. So I think the level of constant awareness, because as
mhm,
humans, we live in a society that is full of distractions.
Mm.
It's designed to take you from your north. So when people come to our retreats, they find themselves again in that
mhm.
north state.
Mhm.
Their
Yeah.
intuition levels are heightened. They're able to really understand better how to process decisions in their life, and they get a
Mhm,
clarity in very aspects of themselves. So that's one of the beautiful aspects of tuning in. We like to call it like a complete attunement
mhm,
to the body, to the mind, to the spirit, and it goes far beyond the five senses we're taught, right? It really activates other senses that people aren't even aware of. And
mhm.
so it really becomes quite magical and powerful at the same time to see and witness people go through this process.
Mm. And what about you, Sarah?
So I think in my humanness, what has shifted in really beautiful ways is, let's say, 8 years ago, if something came into my life, I may have been upset for a week. And that week
Mhm.
looked like anger. It may have looked like sadness. It may have looked like resentment. And that space of being in it to
Mhm.
observing it or being aware of it has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter.
Mm.
So, and not always, but I do feel very centered in a space at which when something comes into my life, I fundamentally know that all of us humans, humanity, we're doing the best we can with what we have. So I have kind of a baseline of compassion and a
Mhm.
baseline of peace.
Hmm. Is that like, would you credit that from the experience itself or the, like the integration following and as more of like a daily thing?
For sure, a daily thing. I'll give an example of what could happen in a ceremony. So I'm in a ceremony. And by the way, I know that people hear about the challenges of ceremony and we prepare others for the challenges of ceremony, but ceremonies are incredible. And I'm having an amazing time. I'm connected. And all of a sudden, there's something a little dark that comes up. Not good or bad, just there's a challenge there. And if I face it, and I could not face it, it'll come back like life. Life
Mhm.
and ceremony reflect each other. And say I face it, an example of what could happen is it says, "Hey, Sarah, did you know you have this pattern?"
Mm.
And perhaps that could be that I don't build something with people that I love because I'm afraid that if the
Mm.
relationship didn't work out, I would lose everything. Did you
Mm.
know that you do that? And then I would say, I did not know that. And it goes,
Yeah.
let me tell you why. And it could bring me to a point in my life where it says, this is where that fear developed.
Mm.
And then I go through the rest of ceremony loving everything. And then the next day, I'll reflect on it and say, is that
Mm.
true? And then I'll look back and I'll see that I've chosen careers where I do it on my own. I travel alone. I do these things alone. And when I'm building something, I always have something over here for the just in case. Yes, that
Mhm.
is true. I have not fully dove into something out of fear of losing it. Would you
Mm.
like to keep doing that? No. Okay. What steps do you need to take where you quit moving in fear and you move in love? And then take
Mm.
those steps. And so,
Yeah.
in case you can't tell, that was one of the biggest shifts. I've had a few big shifts, and that's one of the biggest ones. And this is where we are because I
Wow.
was able to make that shift.
Wow. That's awesome. And it's clear that's like really brought you guys together, and I assume as you have been together, it's probably brought you closer together.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, I prior to taking uh psilocybin, since it sounds like we're using scientific language,
Yeah.
um
Magic mushroom.
magic mushrooms. Yeah, I had lost I yeah, so 3 months prior, I'd lost my dad, and that experience of losing my dad, he had, terminal esophageal cancer, so from the onset of his illness, he passed away 9 months later, and I had a lot of, anticipatory grief, anticipating him dying, and yeah, I think that experience really made me question, like, what I was living for, and at the time I was a senior in college, so I was still very young, but I was living for, validation of others. I was living for, validation of myself. I was living for, like, n nothing in my life was really about other people or serving other people, and it was all about just gratifying my own sense of self, and I think when I had come to I think, yeah, the psilocybin was really my first stop, but after a bunch of self-help books that I read, I was like, "Alright, this is not sticking. I need something more," and I came to my first time taking mushrooms, and I was really, like, searching for something. I didn't know what. I was raised, Jewish, but my family, we weren't, like, going to synagogue, we weren't praying, like, we'd celebrate Passover, but I was like, "Oh, those stories, who knows if they're real? I don't know." And so I didn't have, like, a belief system that I could really default to, or I didn't have any sort of framework, I would say. Forget belief system, a framework of, like, what do I do in this experience? Where do I go? How do I deal with these emotions? And I would say psilocybin was kind of my first stop after those books, and that first experience, not this was prior to the Chili Peppers concert, but this experience, the first one was not as intense and scary, but it really showed me that there was more to what I was living for, and at the time, I was the president of my fraternity. I was studying business. I was like, my life's aspiration was to be a hedge fund manager. And so I was preparing to, go, I was working for a consulting company and I was going to work there after school. And, after that experience of, taking mushrooms, I was like, there's more, there's more. I need like purpose in my life. I need something that isn't just for somebody else, because, when you experience tragedy, when you experience loss or hardship, as you guys know,
Mhm.
it's you need a sense of purpose to really get you through. Otherwise, you're just like blowing like something in the wind, a sail or whatever, a kite. And so I don't know where I was going with this, but uh yeah, I think where I was going with is I think it does have a tremendous ability to really provide people with that awareness and to really examine your sense of self. Um, but I guess where I'm going is my question to you is, because in my experience, it gave me, a little bit of light of what to do next. Like here's the next thing for you to do. But it wasn't, it wasn't it was to me, that's all it did for me, and I had to really do the work to make that, you know to yeah, for that to really stick with my to really stick in my day-to-day life, so I guess my question for you guys is, how do you how do you frame that when discussing the importance of facilitating experience and people making that choice to use psychedelics themselves?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I would start with saying that, for us, like if this is your first time entering this, take the time to, um, first of all, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Like, I think it's important to realize that you're coming in with true intentions, true desires, that you're not just simply coming in to maybe be part of a conversation, but that there's rather
Mm.
an innate desire within to learn.
Mm,
I think that would be one aspect, and it's important to have that first experience be as wonderful as it could be, right? With hardships or not, or difficulties or not, but that at the end, it turns out to be quite meaningful for you,
mhm,
and that the experience came with no traumas, no additional traumas to it.
yeah,
Mm.
As you could dabble with this on your own and try to figure, but if you don't get the right environment, if you don't have the right settings, and you don't have, then you might just kind of block this out for the rest of your life, because now you
mm,
have this aspect of fear around it, where people shouldn't look at this as fear. This is an intelligence that we're accessing. It's an ability to biohack into oneself.
Mm.
And it allows us to go into the healing or expansion modality in which, we desire. And from there, there's tons of growth. There's tons of knowledge,
mhm,
access to information and data that, that could really be quite significant in our lives. So
yeah,
I think it's really taking the first steps into this. And we like to work with people coming in for the first time, creating the right initial environment for them, but also empowering them,
Yeah.
mm,
teaching them, providing them the knowledge that they have the power to really do this on their own and in the right setting, and that they don't have to come to a retreat to really achieve this. But we work hard in giving a lot of education and empowerment
Mhm.
along the way.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that's, really important because, if you think of somebody who's just on Wall Street and that's what they've done their whole life, and they're like this whole world is so, for most people, is they don't know anything about it. And all they really know is what they might hear, see in the media, or from maybe, if they're lucky, one person who had an experience that, transformed them.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess, yeah, were you gonna say something, Sarah?
I'll just add a bit that you're right that frequently people come because something grand happened in their life, whether painful, sorrowful, hitting a depression or anxiety. And I also hope that people don't have to wait until they're in those places. Um, and there's also this incredible beauty that no matter the career that we choose, that you have the ability to see it as that we don't start defining ourselves as a hedge fund manager, and then that external validation and all that
Yeah.
comes or all that is expected of a hedge fund manager, of
Yeah.
a corporate person, of an athlete. We start putting masks on to become that person. And
Mhm.
what's beautiful about these practices is to have that awareness of recognizing what it is. Is it a
Mm.
layer or is it a mask? Is this me or is this a means? Um, it's funny that even with athletes, they'll say, my career is a game. And
Mhm.
so unless you're of service, almost everything is made up by humans. And it
Mhm.
is, in a way, especially in the finance, I went into finance, humans made it up. And so to interact with it in that way and not define ourselves and continue to seek external validation, but
Mhm.
having that awareness of what is important to me. And so we
Yeah.
can still be a hedge fund manager and not be in it. We
Yep.
can be an observer of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that reminds me of Ram Dass a lot. I used to listen to a bunch of his stuff. I still do, I still love him. But and I think that brings up a important question, you're talking about identity and what should our identity be in?
But
Your spirit.
yeah, I think most people really lose their sense of identity, and that's a big one because we live in a society that has so much programming, so much conditioning. So
Mhm.
our identity is lost, even as a children, because we're getting transferred that identity from our parents, and
Mhm.
that kind of transfer overs to, the distractions of the world and the indoctrinament of the world and all of these things. We slowly forget who we are, and
Yeah.
this is one of the things that these plant teachers provide. It gives us access to ourselves again, to our
Mhm.
spirit, to our system of knowing who we really and truly are. And sometimes it happens gracefully through these ayahuasca or psilocybin ceremonies, or it comes like a defibrillator and a jolt reminder through a
Yeah.
Bufo 5-MeO DMT experience will give you a jolt of what this
Yeah.
life is truly about, and you recognize that and
Yeah.
come back to your identity again. So
Yeah. And the sovereignty of our own consciousness to say, okay, let's look at
Mhm.
why am I the way that I am? And many of the aspects of my characteristic, I look back and I'm very grateful. Thank you for that program. It was a beautiful program. And program not being positive or negative, just we
Mhm.
all are learning things and then we show up because of what we learned. And then some programs, it was like that was beneficial at the time, but it's no longer beneficial. So I'm going to
Mhm.
control alt delete. And then some programs that weren't beneficial, and working through, okay, somebody else wrote that for me, for my
Mhm.
life. Frequently that happens when we are trying to seek external validation or
Yeah.
things like that. And then start saying, who am I? Who am I?
Mhm.
And hoping or walking the path of making that interesting and fun, not dreaded. I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
And many people do come on our retreat with that feeling of, this could be from a career change or kids leaving the house or graduation and saying,
Yeah.
I kind of lost myself.
mm.
Okay, let's get to know ourselves and then shift it to, I'm going to write this. I'm going to write my life.
Mm. That's interesting. Is that so? Because Danny, you mentioned like your identity is in, it's in spirit. And then Sarah, you're mentioning how there's almost like this choice of what our identity becomes and like what is that? How do those play together? What is there room for both? And what is their relationship with one another?
Yeah. And what a fun path to figure out for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
Who am I? Who is my spirit? When is it my ego talking to me or when is it my spirit talking to me? And I think that is led through the practices of getting in touch with our intuition.
Mhm.
uh, I love that science has moved from everything mental is chemistry to your gut health is also important. And then also people are becoming more connected to themselves.
Mhm.
There's a time where in corporate environments, for example, if somebody said we should do this, why? And if they said, because I had a feeling, I have a feeling, people would say, no, I need data. And so we have dismissed intuition. We have dismissed
Mhm.
downloads from maybe our spirit, if you believe in God, or however the universe works. Those things have been dismissed, and to
Mhm.
get in touch with those things.
Yeah.
Mm.
I would say that our Bufo 5-MeO experiences are an ego dissolution, right? They dissolve that social construct of who you think you are,
Yeah.
what your identity you thought think you are, and all of a sudden that just dismantles itself. It falls apart and creates a little bit of like, oh, what am I now without that? And then you cross over and end up crossing over into a place of abundant love,
Mm.
source, to God itself. And you reach that
Energy.
state and you find yourself in this state of bliss of realizing, wow, my identity is a lot more, right?
Yeah.
It gives you a clear um, aspect of understanding that unified field of
Mhm.
all of us being one, and that shifts our identity. We start to develop a different ego construct from that point, because we realize that we're all connected in one way or another. We're not just this ego construct that our society, from the moment we have been going to school and being programmed, has
Mhm.
forced us to be in this little cage of thinking this is who you are. And our
Mm.
spirit is in constant contact with us. It's more than ever wanting to make connection with you, with your vessel, with yourself. And
Mhm.
it comes through that gut feeling, as Sarah says, having that gut health is critically
Mhm.
important, because that's where you get the gut feelings from. And that gut feeling is coming from your higher self. It's coming from
Mhm.
your spirit. It's allowing you to dictate where is the path, what is the
Yeah.
purpose, what is the right decisions, and walk into this world with what I would call universal flow, which is
Mhm.
really perceiving all the synchronicities and senses that the life is providing around you. But we get caught up so much in distractions that we lose the synchronicities, and then our path gets all convoluted all of a sudden.
Mm.
But when you're in synchronicity with life, then the flow is much easier.
Yeah. What do you think are some of those distractions that, keep people away from having that connection to the spirit?
There's a million.
Yeah, the list is long. The world is designed around distraction.
Yeah.
And it could be entertainment at all sorts of different levels. Of course, the doom scrolling and these little apparatuses I mean, it just goes on and on. But in reality, you just have to realize, am I paying more attention externally, or am
Mhm.
I really looking internally? And that
Yeah.
needs to be put on check every several minutes in your
Yeah.
default mode. You should be constantly coming back into, whoa, where am I? And if you realize, you're going to realize that the majority of the time you are looking for external entertainment,
Mhm.
external distractions, rather
Yeah.
than pausing for the moment and looking internally within. And there lies where the key messages in life will bring you.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think choosing a life of intention. And so that's a way to show up daily. So I can come home, change clothes, go out to eat, and then while I'm at dinner with my loved one, I'm here and I'm there and I'm not fully listening. Or
Mhm.
for people that have kids, they come home and they had a tough day and their
Yeah.
kids are playing and they're upset that the kids are making a mess, as opposed to saying, "This is life, let's make a mess."
Mm.
There's this a story about a student asking his Zen master, "What is enlightenment?" And he said, "When I'm hungry, I eat, and when I'm tired, I rest." And he goes,
Mm.
"Everyone does that." He's like, "No, they don't. When they're hungry, they think of 1,000 things while they're eating and they don't taste their food."
Mm.
And so it's the purpose of saying, okay, I am going to go out to eat with a friend, and I'm going to, my intention of that interaction is going to be that my friend knows that I love them and that I'm here and I'm
Mm.
listening to them,
Yeah.
as opposed to checking my phone or doing this or doing the other things. And that can be a daily decision.
Mm.
When I wake up and run out the door, my intention, I didn't settle. And so life is happening and I am navigating maybe more reactively than actively. And so it's getting to know ourselves and saying, I need 15 minutes every day before I leave the house to say, let's get centered. And so that we
Mhm.
move in the way in which we want to move.
Mm. So how do we practice that awareness? Besides, if someone, all right, they went on a retreat, they took, entheogenic substances. and they had an experience, they had an encounter, and now they're back on Wall Street. It's like how can they continuously practice, that awareness.
Mm,
Yeah. First, it's making the decision to do that. It's to say, I am going to live a life more consciously and in more awareness. And at first, we will get off and we might not notice it for 2 days. And then it
Mm,
takes a day and then it takes an hour. Also, some people are into this path and they start spiritually bypassing emotions and saying, I never
mhm,
get angry. And so it's also an awareness that anger has a purpose and
yeah.
it's right below energy. So luckily we have the energy to activate, but
Mhm,
it's am I conscious and aware to act and not react? To have
mm,
conversations and that are beneficial, to have conversations
yeah.
from our heart. And
mm,
so it's a commitment to yourself. And then we each make those designations of how does this work for me? And so
Mhm,
for me, it might mean every hour for a week, I need to set my alarm and say, am I centered? Am I in a space of where I'm judging people or being negative?
mm,
If negativity is something I'm working on, then I start making the parameters for myself
mhm,
practice
yeah.
being positive
yeah.
over and over until it's who I am.
I would add to that two words: presence and intention.
Mm.
Mhm,
I think those are the daily things that we need to have, regardless of what it is. And I know sometimes it's really hard when you haven't dedicated the time for some inner
yeah.
work or self actualization. And this is the beautiful thing about coming to maybe our retreats or dabbling into the world of these sacred plant medicines. But when you're able to move into the self actualization and awareness of your
Yeah.
life, you're able to feel what it feels, what
Mm.
Mm,
deep meditation could feel like. Not everyone has the time to go deep into the practice, but much less will you ever have the sensation or the feeling of what
mm,
that feels like. And so I know Sarah doesn't like when I use the word of cheat or shortcuts, but this is exactly what these
Mm.
plant medicines do. They provide a level of a cheat and a shortcut to get to a point where you now know how it feels to get
mhm,
there. And of
yeah.
course, practice, once you have that level of connection with that feeling, then the practice is, of course, the work that you're going to do. And it's a lot easier when you know when you've reached to that feeling. Without it,
Mhm,
you could easily sidetrack and get lost in so many different directions. But when that feeling comes in
yeah.
and you know exactly how that feels, then that's the path you can learn to take every day
Mm,
by either meditating, doing yoga, breath work. There's different
Mm.
modalities that help you to connect again to that feeling.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Our ayahuasca retreats are called the guide inside because we are trying to teach people that you don't need this continuously.
Mm,
The goal is to have these experiences, learn something, and then have it in our normal daily lives. We don't
yeah.
have to keep coming back. We don't need something outside of ourselves.
Mm, yeah. That's great. And, Danny, what you were saying too reminds me, it made me think of the Alan Watts quote when he says, like, "Beware of unearned wisdom." And, like, that's what I think when I think back to, like, going to the Chili Peppers concert and we're like, "All right, we're gonna take a bunch of mushrooms and it'll be fun." And then it's like, "Whoa, we're in this place now where now I'm confronted with, like, my deepest childhood trauma,
Yeah.
and I'm, like, stuck in this place with my friend who's just like we're just kind of casual friends, but now we're like confronting each other's like deep childhood trauma in a random hotel in DC, and like what is going on and how do we get out?" And uh so I love how you guys are, stewarding this responsibility with care, and yeah, with a heart of really shepherding and serving your clients. And because I think that is rare, like I used prior I live in Connecticut, but before that I lived in Austin. And I mean, everyone and their mom there has been on like an ayahuasca retreat, and not everybody's experience, most experiences aren't, not this intentful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I've known people, my wife she's had experiences on DMT, and she's used to hang out in circles where people would, do these things weekly or bi-weekly, and it's like it gets to a point where it's like, is this really are you really using this to, you know, to for your own development and to really connect with your spirit, or are you using it as an escape or chasing the high of the experience?
Yeah.
And so yeah, we're yeah very aware of, you know, the dark shadow side of this. And I think, you know, you're right to encourage people too. It's like you're not supposed to need this your whole life, you know? And I would also ask you guys, like, what, like, you mentioned a little bit about community, but what is, like, how do you guys focus on your own community? You know, you're doing a lot of this work, and I'm sure you're around a lot of things that can be challenging, you know, challenging encounters. But so, like, what do you like? How do you guys build community where you are, and what do you look for?
Yeah. I want to start by just correcting a word you said when you mentioned your clients. And it's a term we don't use because you know, guests is the word we use, and guests, they come and they go. A client is something that you've got someone hooked
Mm,
for, you know, to have to come back.
yeah,
So we really
that's
enjoy
fair.
the word of guests in
Yes.
that
And then
aspect.
they become our community.
And then they
Yeah.
become, from guests, then they become our alumni.
Yeah.
And that alumni group is really our community amongst
Mhm.
everyone else that is in this environment, right? Because it's a separate growing community. It's still
Mhm.
very, you know, isolated and small in the overall aspect of, I don't know, the 8 billion people, so they say, on this planet. But
Mhm.
we we're still a small and fast growing community. So it could feel very isolated when you come in and do this kind of transformative work. And all of a sudden the veil has been lifted and you're able to, like, wow, I'm realizing, witnessing the world in a way that I
Yeah.
wasn't seeing it before. So you're starting to see through the illusion that you've been programmed or deceived to be. And then of course it could feel quite lonely out there when you're, you know, just all of a sudden just not relating the same way with the things that you're relating before. So that community is really critical and important for
Mhm.
us. And the community starts with our small group retreats, because that's one thing that we pride ourselves on, is really creating small, intimate settings.
Mhm.
These are just a group of average 10 people that come together in a setting that are very well curated. Everyone goes through a very important screening process to making sure not everyone gets invited, but if you get invited, that community starts right there. It starts with
Mhm.
that small group that create a major bond with themselves.
Yeah.
And that
Mm.
bond is bond that's for life, because you're
Yeah.
doing something that is just spectacular. And of course, that community for us over the years has grown into the thousands. And we're really happy to kind of be holding space for everyone
Wow.
that's coming across the board on this.
Wow.
If you're open, I'd like to share just a fun thought of the path to 3 grams of red hot chili peppers that would be amazing. And so people frequently talk about set and setting, and
Mhm.
some people believe that set and setting need to be great in order to have to show up for a psychedelic experience, and that isn't true.
Mhm.
So set is our mindset. If our mindset is very strong, our our setting can be more open. And
Mm.
I'll give some examples. If our mindset is, for example, maybe we are experiencing a low, a compression, a bit of anxiety. So if our setting is not very strong, then our set let me say that again. If our mindset is needing some attention,
Mhm.
then our setting needs to be very strong. And so
Mm.
that would be a retreat, for example. And
Yeah.
so we don't have need to have a perfect mindset in order to experience psychedelics, but then our setting needs to be strong.
Mm.
So let's say we take a setting of a Red Hot Chili Peppers concert. 3 grams of mushrooms can be incredible. However, if you're there with a like you mentioned, not a really close friend, but
Yeah.
somebody you knew, and all of a sudden you're faced with these things, then it starts getting wonky. And
Yeah.
so I think the path to the 3 grams of Red Hot Chili Peppers would be one in which you say, okay, let's work with 1 gram in a safe setting.
Yeah.
Let's work with 1.5 gram on a nature walk. Let's work with this and work with it. And then you'll get to the point where you will go to a Red Hot Chili Peppers with 3 grams with somebody. And then say it starts getting wonky. You can even go, I'm going to stand right next to you and not talk. And now he knows I got a little wonky.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting thing that I can look at not with fear, but curiosity. And
Mm,
that's how we get to you going to a Red Hot Chili Peppers with 3 grams.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's interesting too, because I've, after that experience, um, and I wouldn't say it was from that experience, but I would say that those two experiences that I had of using psilocybin led me to, sparked me on this search for truth. And so,
Mhm.
because from there, I was like, there's no way that it's not going to be me doing mushrooms every weekend. Like, that's just like not sustainable. Or at least 3 grams like that. And so for me, that was really the start of like searching for something deeper, and, I'm a big reader, and I got very much into reading, different Buddhist texts, different Hindu texts, reading a bunch of Ram Dass, reading different like spiritual traditions, and really trying to understand what is it about, these spiritual paths that allow people to, get to this state where they're not doing drugs all the time, and they're, yeah, and, like, what is a sustainable way to actually to feel good about my life? Like, that's really what I was searching for, and really looking for purpose and for meaning in my life, and a framework that would allow me to navigate that. And so, I don't know, how I feel about psychedelics now is I don't I would never say never, but I would say that, like, I found what I was looking for,
Beautiful.
and, like, believe you me, like, I still get very angry, I'm still very impatient, I still have, plenty of, inner work to do myself,
Yeah.
um, but, I would say that I found what I was looking for,
Beautiful.
and, yeah,
Nice.
yeah, that's all.
So good.
I love it. I love
Although,
it.
and that's finding what it is and finding that peace of mind and being in that state is beautiful. The other aspects around these entheogenic plant teachers is the expansive side, where you're kind of stepping into this for that biohacking expansion aspect of it, where you can gain an enormous amount of insights. You're now able to tap into the aether of where all the great minds, all the artists and singers, where all the music comes, everything
Hmm.
that you can come and access, we all have access to. And
Yeah.
that's something we've been working a lot in the aspects of expansion within our
Yeah.
retreats.
I
Mhm.
mentioned the athlete who discovered my career is literally called a game. That doesn't mean he quits playing. That means that
Yeah,
he has a different awareness in the way in which he shows up.
yeah,
That means
yeah,
that if he loses a game, he doesn't think he's any less worthy. It means that when he is on the highest high, he is sharing, and when he's on a low, he is aware.
Yeah.
It's the
yeah,
awareness
Or finding the flow,
and the
finding
flow.
the flow state where you are in that perfect flow state that everything works out
That's
as an
accessible
athlete
to all of us.
perfectly in every way. And
mm.
that's an heightened state of awareness and
Mhm.
consciousness. That's some of the benefits of these things.
Do you think that these heightened states, or do you think that these substances are required to achieve those states?
Absolutely not.
No, at all, at all.
Mhm.
These are just shortcuts and paths, and there's many ways to finding yourself. I love the practice of breath work, for instance, fasting, um,
Mm,
kirtan, which is with music and mantra. There's many
yeah,
ways to enter into a meditative state. It's just really hard when if you haven't really developed your practice yet, it
yeah,
could take a while, and most people quit early on in the beginning phase of it all, even midway, they'll just say, I'm not getting there. So
mm,
it's disheartening for most people. And that's why these shortcuts or teachers
yeah,
here can allow you to get access to that, right fast to the end
yeah,
of that.
Yeah.
And
That's where I do resonate with Danny calling it a shortcut or a cheat. We can get a perspective or awareness on something that maybe would have taken me much longer to get it in my normal level of
yeah,
consciousness. But um, even through a practice of contemplation, I'm going to contemplate. I'm going to ask the question from the Greeks and the Romans of who am I? Who am I?
Mhm.
That you can have a contemplative practice and recognition of, okay, here's how I show up in certain ways. Do I want to keep doing that? And contemplate that. So each day, contemplate your day. How did you show up? Where are you proud? Where would you like to do it a little bit different? And develop that discipline and the agreement with yourself that you're going to walk that path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that, the life that we're all in this world is highly full of distractions. So it's really tough
Yeah.
sometimes to really kind of immerse yourself in oneself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So things to
Definitely.
be aware about.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it really that's where it, also becomes a daily practice of yeah, of not only discipline but also of surrender, and for me that practice looks like asking God like help
Yeah.
me to not do these things that I find myself doing, help me give me the strength and cuz like for me that's when I feel disconnected, from the what I believe to be, God and the Holy Spirit. And like when I'm doing things, when I'm indulging in things, or if I'm looking at things that I shouldn't be looking at, and then I can feel disconnected. And
Yeah.
then for me, that is like that's my indicator to, like I need to go, I need to pray, I need to, get back in the house of God, and not from a place of like guilt, because
Yeah.
like I don't have that much baggage of like people that are, grew up and they have that, they say Catholic guilt, but still like I want to get back into your presence, back into that feeling. And it really, it really is a daily thing, and it's never ending, as long as we're in the flesh. And
Yeah.
but it's yeah, I've really enjoyed your, hearing your guys' story, hearing your perspective, I think most importantly on how you show up in this work, and how you show up in serving people. And yeah, I've really enjoyed this conversation. And if you guys don't have any other questions, we can just wrap it up.
Yeah. Um, I can tell from halfway around the world that you're a genuine and authentic human being. And so thank you for sharing the time and your vibration. It's also been a joy for us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm also really excited to kind of witness your path of purpose. So the
Thank
fact
you.
that you've initiated this podcast is your act of service
Yeah.
to
Thank
others.
you.
So thank you for that.
Thank you for
I
your work.
appreciate it. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll end it here.